Henry was an old town scoundrel, not known particularly for his ethics or his morality. And one day he was unhappy because he had lost his favorite hat. And so Henry said, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go up to the church, and I'm going to go into the narthex while they are worshiping, and I'm going to steal a hat, and then I'll have a hat. So Henry walked up to the church, and he was greeted by an usher in the narthex, and the usher took him to the pews, and he had to sit there and listen to an entire sermon on the Ten Commandments. And he stayed there the whole service. Well, after the service, he was walking out into the narthex, and the priest was in the back, and Henry walked up to him, and he said, Father, I want to thank you for saving my soul this morning. You see, I came here to church to steal a hat. But after I heard your sermon, I was saved. And the priest said, well, was it the thou shalt not steal that spoke to you this morning? He said, no. He said, when you said thou shalt not commit adultery, I remembered exactly where my hat was. And the priest just kind of looked at him with a befuddled look on his face. A Sunday school teacher was teaching her class of 5 and 6-year-olds the importance of the commandment, honor thy father and mother. And she said, now children, can you think of another commandment that has to do with how we treat our siblings? And without missing a beat, one little boy raised his hand and said, is it thou shalt not kill? Today we're beginning a new series on the Ten Commandments. And I'm recommending a book. If you are looking for a book in your devotional life to go along with this, it's a book that's called The Truth About God by Stanley Hauerwas and Will Willimon. We have copies in our bookstore here, or you can order it online if you would prefer. You're probably familiar with the story in Exodus. Moses has led the Israelites out of Egypt, out of slavery, out of bondage. They have crossed the Red Sea, and they've begun their journey to the Promised Land. They reach Mount Sinai, and Moses goes up to receive the Ten Commandments. God speaks to him and says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. And you shall not covet. And I would encourage you to learn the Ten Commandments. Even if you cannot remember the specific order, try to learn what the 10 are. The Ten Commandments, also known as the Decalogue, became the law of Israel, a gift from God, showing his people how they are to live their lives as a part of the covenantal relationship. The first 4 commandments have to do with the Israelites' relationship to God, and the final 6 commandments have to do with the Israelites' relationship to each other. And it's important to note that it's only after God has led the Israelites out of Egypt, freeing them from slavery and from bondage, crossing over the Red Sea, that he gives them the commandments of how they are to live as his people. The law is confirmation of the covenantal relationship that the Israelites have with God. The law is given because of that relationship. Now, in this book, Hauerwas and Willimon say that the commandments are not guidance for humanity in general. They are not a countercultural way of life for those who know who they are. They are a countercultural way of life for those who know who they are and whose they are. Their function is not to keep American culture running smoothly, but rather to produce a people who are, in our daily lives, a sign, a signal, a witness that God has not left us to our own devices. We have the Ten Commandments because we have been redeemed and delivered by God. We cannot study the Ten Commandments without taking into consideration that opening statement, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You see, Yahweh is a liberating God. Somebody once compared it to making rules for your children. You might make rules for your children, and your kids won't understand, but you're making rules for your children because those rules are in their best interest, and because you love them, because you care for them. This morning we're looking at the first two. No other gods before me, and no idols. You see, Moses goes up on Mount Sinai, he leaves his brother Aaron in charge, and the Israelites, as they often do, grow restless, and they go to Aaron saying, come, make gods for us, who shall go before us? As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. So Aaron, being a much weaker leader than Moses, says, okay, gather all your jewelry and your earrings and that of your family and bring it to me. And the Bible tells us that he took all of these things, he melted them together, he made a mold, and he formed a golden calf for them to worship. Well, meanwhile, back up on Mount Sinai, the Lord tells Moses, go down at once. Your people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt have acted perversely. They have turned from me, and they are now worshiping a golden calf as their God. So Moses hurries down the mountain to deal with the situation. See, I've always had respect for Moses as a leader because Moses had to deal with things over and over again. The people complained. The people turned. The people were told to do this, but they did that. And Moses had to deal with that time and time again. Isn't it ironic what he finds when he comes back down the mountain from receiving the Ten Commandments that begin with, you shall have no other gods before me, and you shall not make idols. He finds the people worshiping a golden calf. Isn't it ironic how quickly the Israelites turn to a false god for security? Presbyterian pastor Tim Keller writes a book called Counterfeit Gods, and in that book he says this: what is an idol? An idol is anything more important to you than God. Anything that absorbs your heart and your imagination more than God. Anything that you seek to give you what only God can give. A counterfeit God is anything so central and essential to your life that should you lose it, your life would feel hardly worth living. We may not have a golden calf per se, but we have plenty of idols in our lives that we turn into false gods. So let's name a few this morning. Idol number one, self. There are so many people who worship themselves. This is often referred to as narcissism or narcissistic behavior. They think that life revolves around them, that they are only concerned about their own needs, their own wants, and the concept of putting other people first does not even begin to cross their mind. But Jesus said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Any who want to become my followers must deny self and take up their cross and follow me. If we're not careful, we can allow self to become an idol. And selfishness is a huge problem in our culture. And Jesus calls us to work against it. In fact, I've said before that to some degree, Christianity is a giant experiment in learning to be unselfish. Idol number two, money. Friedrich Nietzsche once predicted that in Western culture, as a belief in God started to go down, we would replace that belief in God with a belief in money. And to a large degree, he was right, because we live in a world where it's all about money. Those who don't have any money want more of it. Those who have plenty of money want to hold on to it and don't want to lose it. And I made a decision when I started as a minister that I would talk about money. not just to raise it for the church, but I would talk about it because it's something that every single one of us deals with on a regular basis. And I don't think it does anybody any good to just ignore the subject of money. Jesus didn't do that. There are a few things in our world that motivate people like money. And to some degree, this is understandable because, it takes money for basic necessities in life. It takes money for food, shelter, clothing, education. But there are many misunderstandings about money in our world. There is the widespread misunderstanding that money, in and of itself, will bring about happiness in life. And the only people that know that money is not the secret to happiness are those who have plenty of money, but they still don't find themselves happy or completely satisfied. Because even folks that are rich in the world still wonder what it would be like to have more. If it's true that wealth brings the greatest satisfaction and happiness, then shouldn't the wealthiest people in our culture be the happiest and the most satisfied? But that's usually not the case. I know many people who are very well off, but often they're some of the most restless people that I know. Because they might have everything to live with, but oftentimes they are still looking and longing for something to live for. And Jesus is clear about money in the New Testament. He says, no one can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and wealth. Jesus didn't say you can't be wealthy, but he did say you cannot serve both God and wealth. And yes, there are people who are wealthy who do not serve wealth. Idol number 3, social status. We want to know the right people. We want to go to the right places. We want to go to the right parties, send our kids to the right schools, have the right connections. And so what happens is people treat certain people differently if they think that that can help them climb the ladder. Have you ever been around somebody who wanted to use you for something, but when they realized that you couldn't help them get what they wanted, then they really wanted nothing to do with you? I've been there. There seems to be a lot of that in our culture. People using people. See, social status can quickly become an idol, but Jesus didn't seem to be too concerned about social status, and I think sometimes we're way too concerned about social status. Idol number 4, physical beauty. I joke with my wife sometimes that I really work hard to not let this become an idol in my life. But it's amazing how much time and money we will spend on trying to look young and beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with taking care of ourselves and with wanting to look good until it becomes an obsession and it dominates our lives and our budgets. We're often guilty of neglecting our inner beauty and solely focusing on our outer beauty. And we have a culture that seems to be much more concerned with outer beauty than it is with inner beauty. Yet we know that God does not see us this way. The Lord looks on the heart. And God is calling us to look past outer appearance so that we can find out what is in somebody's heart. Idol number 5, children. And I say this very carefully as a young father with a 4-year-old daughter, 2.5-year-old son. I love my children dearly, as many of you do. But we live in an age where many parents love and dote on their children, and they give them everything that they want, and they protect them from failure at all costs, but they forget that their primary role is to be their parents and not their buddy. Sometimes parents will neglect everything else in their lives, including their marriage, to give their children everything. And that's not healthy. Sometimes parents will talk to their children about things that they should be talking to their spouse about. Children can very quickly become idols. Idol number 6, material things. Houses, cars, TVs, furniture, designer clothing, shoes, purses, handbags, jewelry, watches. All the things that we think that we need to be happy and fulfilled. But the joke is always on us because we get this stuff and it never satisfies us. We always want more. And we rationalize the stuff that we buy by saying, well, it's on sale. I should be able to buy it. It's on sale. I can't pass up that deal. Yes, you can. You don't need it. And it's only going to give you temporary satisfaction until you decide that you need something else. Have you ever been to Joseph A. Banks or Macy's when there wasn't a sale going on? Idol number 7, politics. You know, I love the fact that our church has political diversity. We have very conservative Republicans and we have very liberal Democrats and everything in between. And I think that's the way it's supposed to be. In fact, I think it would be boring any other way, to be honest with you. But what I don't like is when partisan politics from either side gets in the way of logic and making sound decisions. And sometimes we are so committed to our political party that we don't think for ourselves. And we have political candidates that promise to deliver on things, and they always fall short. And we get disillusioned with them. I think partisan politics can become an idol. And loyalty to our political party can keep us from thinking for ourselves. Idol number 8, work. Many of us are guilty of being workaholics, and usually our intentions are good. We're passionate about our job. We want to provide for our families. We want to climb the ladder of success and give the next generation what we didn't have. But in the midst of it, we can lose our sense of balance, and we can find ourselves living to work rather than working to live. We can forget how important it is to spend time with our families, to be present with our families. Rarely will you hear somebody on their deathbed say, I wish I had spent more time at the office. We can let work become an idol, a god, if we're not careful. And lastly, idol number 9, drama and conflict. What do I mean by that? I mean that there are some people in life that worship drama and conflict, and they thrive on it. And if everything is going well in life, if it's a peaceful time, then you don't see them. But if something goes wrong, you can't get rid of them. And it happens in families. It happens at work. It happens just about anywhere that people come together with different opinions and perspectives. My grandfather once made a very profound statement. He said, you know, the more time I spend around people, the more I like my cat Fluffy. Because living in community and interacting with other people is not always easy. And I think that the more peaceful and understanding we can be, the better. Now, these are some of the things in life that we can turn into idols, into false gods if we're not careful. And some of these things are actually good things when kept in balance, but if we're not careful, they can become gods when we're not expecting it. But these are the things that Jesus warned about. And these are the things that we struggle with on a daily basis in our lives as we seek to find balance. Emerson once said, a person will worship something, have no doubt about that. We may think that our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will come out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship, for what we are worshiping, we are becoming. As Christians, we must learn to follow the first 2 commandments before the rest of the commandments will make any sense. And according to Hauerwas and Willimon in this book that I'm recommending, the 10 Commandments are an affirmation that, thank God, God has not done everything that needs doing in the world, but has left plenty for us to do as obedient and faithful people. God, having been creative, faithful, and just, now gives us the means to act the same way. And the best way to follow these commandments is in community, by sharing life together, supporting each other, holding each other accountable. The community that we know as the church is perhaps the best place to follow and apply these commandments. I hope you'll join with me this fall in thinking about these 10 commandments seriously, thinking about how they relate to your life and to the way that you interact with other people, treat other people, talk to other people. Because it matters. And God has given us these rules for our own well-being.